Welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast with your host, Chris Anderson. In this show, Chris and his guests will share their knowledge and experience on how to go from zero to successful entrepreneur. They have built their businesses from scratch and are now ready to give back to those who are just starting. Let's get ready to learn, grow, and elevate our businesses. And now, your host, Chris Anderson.
Welcome back to another recording of the Elevate Media Podcast. I'm Chris Anderson, your host. Today, if you're watching the video, it's going to look a little bit different. This is not our new studio, but we're here with Mike and AJ of Agency Coach, and they opened up their home, their office, their space to us to come record this episode because we're down in Tucson shooting a production for another client, and stars aligned. Coincidence happened. They're in Tucson, and so it's just a cool thing. So, Mike, AJ, thanks so much for opening up your space and being on the show as well. So
it's great to have you in the studio, and it's great to be on your podcast.
Yeah, It's really cool, and this is awesome collaboration, right? Like being able to do this with people and share in everything and learn, and so yeah, it's really cool, and can't wait to get this out there so you guys can share with your audience as well, so they can hear from you guys even more. But yeah, so like we were talking kind of before we started. You guys have been in the entrepreneurship space, the business space for a while now, 2003, where you guys started your agency. Kind of let's take a step back in 2023. What was that like, taking that leap or taking that step to start a business? Just kind of dive in, feet first right now.
Yeah, well, you figure 2003, if you really think about it, it's like a whole nother like dimension of time
right
from here. But it was, Google was not the top search engine, and we weren't carrying smartphones around in our pockets. And YouTube wasn't a thing. Facebook wasn't a thing.
Right.
And so, really, that business, our agency, was started as a web design company. And, and even back then, I didn't call it an agency. It was like Mike Schmidt starts a web design company and tries to figure out if he can justify staying in Tucson after graduating college by starting this business. And if that didn't work, plan B was going to be not being around here and moving back home to California with my folks. And so this was my shot to make something happen and build a business that was going to support my future career.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'm sure with that, there's so much when you start a business, like nerves, imposter syndrome. We all hear it. How did you overcome some of that when you're first starting out?
Yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate that I just kind of jumped into it, being willing to just figure it out. My dad was a big supporter of just trying it out. So he paid for my Tucson Chamber of Commerce membership, and
nice.
I started going to breakfast meetings, and I was super uncomfortable, talking to these people who were easily twice my age, and none of them understood anything about web or marketing and that kind of stuff. And it was just put myself out there, see what sticks, see what happens. Yep. And like I said, the alternative was, I had to go figure out something else. And I'm like, well, I really want to make this work. I really want to, stay in Tucson. I was playing in a band that I didn't want to leave. I was dating a girl who I didn't want to leave, became my wife. Right.
Awesome. And
so I'm like, what are the ways in which I can do this? Figure in 2003, the job prospects for a web designer, especially in Tucson, Arizona, there wasn't companies that were like, hey, we need somebody with your skill set at that time. Yeah. It wasn't all over the place. There was a few maybe pockets of opportunity, but by and large, the opportunities for somebody with my skill set was not here.
Yeah.
Right. And, virtual and remote work also was not a thing. So I literally had to go somewhere else to tap into the thing that I wanted to do, or, build it myself.
That's really cool. And, a couple things that I can connect with what you said about you're going to these networking events, talking to people who don't really know what you're talking about or understand it, from the video aspect, even video podcast. So I get that, and it can be a hurdle, but I think it's fun to try to explain it and show them, because then when they start to get it and they start to implement those things, one, it helps their business, which means they help more people. But it's just cool to see the growth that they can have from that. And then you mentioned your why was almost big enough. I love being in this band. I don't want to leave it. And I'm with this girl who, thank you stuck around, and she stuck around.
She probably would have come to California.
Okay. Yeah. No, probably wouldn't have been too hard, but you add that why, which, helps people through those hard times. Now, AJ, when did you come into the picture? How did you guys get connected in this together?
Yeah. So I came in 2008. Mike had already been running it for a few years. I was working in a corporate environment for Intuit, managing the online communities for like QuickBooks and TurboTax and Quicken. And, I felt like a really small cog in this huge machine. And like, it was really hard for me to understand like how the work I was doing day in and day out was really like impacting anything, So I was looking for an opportunity to work maybe more closely with the people that I was helping. Mike had put an ad out for a job that's a website strategist. And what he was really looking for was somebody to help with sales. And it's interesting that he put web strategist, because if he would have put website sales, I would have never applied. Like at that time, I just thought sales was a bad thing. And it was like trying to manipulate people. And it was like that sleazy car salesman. It's like all those things that some people think when they think about sales. Yeah. And because he put website strategist, I was like, cool, this is kind of what I'm doing it into it. I'm managing our web strategy, and I know I like helping people. And if people want advice on how they should handle their strategy, I'd be more than willing to do that. And the crazy part about it is that it was accurate what he was suggesting, because we have a very consultative sales approach, and we're not trying to convince somebody to need something. It's about them coming to us and say, hey, I want help with my online presence. What do you suggest? And us simply suggesting things, right? And not feeling the pressure to like close them on it. It's like, here's what you're trying to do. Here's how I think you should go about doing it. Right. And if you want our help with it, I'd love to do that. If not, no big deal. Right. And so that blossomed into, obviously a lot of success in being able to, sell to people. And I'm proud to say that I'm a salesperson. Like, I wasn't born that way. It didn't feel natural, but we've come up with ways that we can make sales not seem like sales.
Right. And doing it the right way, which I like. That's really awesome. Yeah. So, Mike, how crucial or how big was that shift when you brought AJ on? Did you notice it right away, or was it kind of just a slow thing where you're like, wow, this changed everything? Like, was it like that, or, what was that bringing him on?
Yeah. Early on, it was clear that this was going to work out. Yeah. Right? Good. I had tried unsuccessfully twice before meeting AJ to bring people on to sell. The first guy, he actually came to me one day. He says, Mike, I think you should fire me. I was like, really? Why? What's going on? He's like, well, Mike, I haven't sold anything since I've been here. And I was like, such a nice guy. I was like, yeah, I guess so. Like, yeah, maybe you should go. And it's like, he's how cool of him to like step up, because I wasn't, right? And I think that was also like, we really highlighted the fact that I wasn't leading anybody through that process, and I didn't know what I was doing. So with that as my first experience, I'm like, well, I'll try the exact same thing again. Hired another guy. This guy did sell like maybe one thing, but like eventually he quit and collected unemployment. It was like, I'm like, I don't think it works like that. But I was just like really frustrated. Yeah. I'm like, I've tried this twice. I had already given up project management, and I was wearing that sales role, that sales hat. Right. And so I was trying to figure out how to get myself out of that. So at that point, I kind of just resigned myself to saying, listen, I'm going to be in sales for, I don't know how long I'm willing to do it, but sure would be nice to find someone to come in who could just call my existing opportunities that, just like, I don't have time to reach out to them. I know there's money in my backyard, there's gold in my backyard, but I just have anybody go to do it. So that was kind of the idea behind this web strategy role. Is I'm like, listen, if you understand web and web strategy, you could call a client, you could look at their situation, you look at their website and be like, I think we should do this and that. And that's what he did. Like, actually, we printed out a list of all of our clients. I had this red pen, and I put $1 sign next to the client if I thought it was a small opportunity, and $3 signs if I thought there was like an urgent and good opportunity there. Yeah. And then I put a line through all the people. I'm like, I don't want to work with those people. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what it is. You went top to bottom and started calling on those opportunities. And so pretty quickly, it was evident that not only was he good at web strategy, but that calling your existing base of clients to help them see what else we could do for them is like a massive opportunity.
Gosh, yeah.
And it's like something big inside of our teaching and coaching that we really focus on, because I think most businesses on the planet, especially agency owners, just do a terrible job of going back to their old clients. Most of them will enter our world and be like, Mike, AJ, I need more leads. I'm like, cool. It's not what you need, right? Especially if you've been in business for a period of time and had any measure of success. Well, there are folks that you already attracted into your world, right? Many of which you've already paid you money. Yep. What's to say that they wouldn't do that again? Or even the people that you attracted before that didn't ever hire you, like, what are you doing to get back in front of those people? You did such hard work and spent money to get in front of them, and they just didn't come over that trust tipping point to buy, well, why would you give up then? Like, it's like you're almost there, and then you just take these leads and you throw them in the trash.
Yep.
Right? And so that became a huge eye opener for us, and something we've kind of baked into our culture ever since.
Yeah. And I think that's so crucial, and something, that we've learned with Elevate is, the easiest person to sell to is someone you've already sold to.
100%.
And clients that we've been working with for a while, for us, we'll go look at their, their websites or, their main point of contact for their leads and check out their videos, especially if they have a brand store, or if they don't. Hey, these are 10 years old. They're really outdated. We could help you if you're open to it or if you want that. And most of them are like, oh yeah, we do need that.
Right.
So they already know, and trust you, and you're doing good work. And so following up with what you can help them, how we can elevate them has been a, just a much easier door to walk through.
Absolutely.
And then going back to people who have been clients in the past, or people who've already started to build relationships, just, it's just simpler. And then let referrals, word of mouth, bring in those newer leads that you nurture as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think it's Marketing Metrics that did a study that said that your existing clients are up to 14 times easier to sell to than somebody who doesn't know you at all.
Yeah.
Do you want a 14 times advantage?
Yeah.
Or do you want to go and throw that advantage away with somebody brand new?
Yeah.
Right? I think if you're not going back to those existing clients or people who already know who you are and nurturing the relationship, making them offers, making sure they understand what it is you do, you're throwing away a massive advantage that doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. And a lot of for us, it's an upsell for what we can do past what we initially start with most of the time. When we start with the video podcast and the monthly edits, and then when we throw in hey, we can do a video production and do this, or training video edits, things like that. So what your client is quote unquote worth increases because of that jump in that thing too. So you can increase your profit margins, or you can expand how you're doing in that regard. And so I think we forget that a lot of times as we're trying to just hustle and I just need to reach more people and throw money to ads when they don't necessarily know how to target those people in the wording behind it. So I think that's such a good piece that we hit on for sure. But I also want to hit on kind of your guys' journey too. You guys have figured out, super successful, over 20 years now doing business, which is awesome. And it's, Elevate, we've just been in business since 2021. And so it's I always I get impatient, I'm hurry but patient at the same time, because it's oh, okay, we've come this far, great, this is awesome, so grateful for that. I want to be at the next, I want to keep going. And so seeing people like you guys who've been through the trenches, through the '08 recession, the COVID things, and continued to grow and stuff, it's always a positive thing to see. And okay, yeah, we can keep going and get through whatever comes. How were those challenges for you? You had the economic shift in '08 and '09 era, and then the COVID stuff. How did you guys kind of navigate those waters when they got a little rough?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, because both of those periods of times were actually two of the biggest times of our growth, right? I think when people fall for the story that's going on in the media and the news that, hey, the economy's down and nobody's doing anything. It's if you start to believe that, then that's going to be 100% true. Right.
Yep.
But what's also true is that there's a lot of businesses that maybe weren't as aggressive with marketing, that are hey, I need to kick things into gear because I don't want my business to go under, right? And so if you're showing up for those people with that abundance-based mindset, you're going to attract them. And, companies that were spending money with us started spending more money with us. Other companies that, were kind of just on cruise control and didn't feel the need to market, were now all of a sudden I need to start investing in marketing, right? And so 2008 was great for us.
Awesome.
It led to, one of our first 7-figure years.
Awesome.
And then, during COVID, same type of thing happened, where we were out there still talking to people and, giving them hope and telling them they should invest in marketing. And because of that, it really worked out well for us.
It doesn't mean there wasn't a moment where we're behind the story.
Yeah.
I mean, we say often that this is one of the best times in history to own a marketing company, web or digital agency, simply because, in a great economy, people have money to invest in marketing and need your help. In a bad economy, people are worried and invest money because they need your help.
Yeah.
Right. So it's there's not, there might be different people. And of course, in both of those time periods, we had clients that stopped working with us, right? And a big reason for them was because they believed that they needed to shrink. Right? We had other clients in the same industry, right, who doubled down on their efforts and grew during that time. I think my favorite story from the pandemic was we had one of our sales guys calling down the list of, just cold calling because he wasn't going to in-person stuff anymore and all that stuff, right? He's calling pool companies. One of the first people he gets a hold of answers, and they said they heard his like brief pitch about who we are and what we could do, and they cuss him out. They're like, "What, are you kidding me? You know what's going on right now in this economy? How could you be calling us at a time like this?" Right? Thankfully, he has a thick skin. He keeps dialing.
Good.
Couple dials later, he gets a hold of someone else, and they said, "Oh my gosh, this is so awesome! Thank you for calling. We were literally just having a meeting about this. How we need to talk to somebody about exactly what you guys do. When can we meet?" Right? And that turned into a awesome project for us, and it's something that's turned into like a lifetime value of that client north of $100,000.
Right.
And it's like, how is it that two businesses, same city, literally down the street from one another, and we've got one that's abundance minded and one that's like ready to punch us in the face, right? And I think the answer is there are abundance minded thinkers out there. We just have to tap into those folks, and I think I'm kind of lucky. In 2008, I don't even think I realized there was a recession happening. I've never been a particularly heavy news watcher. Like I'll go through seasons of stuff where I get sucked into it. But I think my advice to most people out there is like, delete the news apps. Cull all that stuff out of your mind, because like, truthfully, you have more control over your own abilities and your influence than you give yourself credit for. And if you allow other people to plug their information into your brain, you might start believing a false story that's not real. And so when people ask about how was it in 2008, I'm like, it was great, but I just thought that was like news always newses, right? It always does the thing that news does, which is like the world's falling apart. And so like, I just kind of assumed that 2008 was just more of that. And so I'm like lucky that I was so blind to it, because then as 2020 came around, while I did start to fall into the, want to crawl under the blanket and just like hide for a minute, I did. But then I started to realize, I'm like, well, this is like that other time, and people need us. And we proved it to ourselves.
And what was so cool about that story is once we saw that with the pool companies, we're like, cool. All right. So now we know like it's not about the industry, right? Because people are like, which industry should I go? It's not about that. It's about the business owner being abundance minded. And so we started coming up with things and reaching out and emailing and doing ads that were all about attracting that type of person, right? We had a webinar that was all about how to activate, how to attract and activate businesses who still want to grow in an uncertain time, right? And we were able to like get a ton of people on that. And guess what? The people that would register for that webinar are the ones that still believe that there's opportunity out there, right? And it was all the people that we wanted to talk to, because we could have still like brunt forced it and cold called all these people and got hung up on all the time. But instead, we just changed our marketing message. And what was so cool about that is we were able to prove that to ourselves. But then now that we have this agency coach thing, we were then able to share those strategies with all these other agencies all over the world who are in a similar boat, and it worked for them too, right? So we were able to like have a global impact on agencies during a time where I think a lot of the world needed that stuff.
For sure. And it's so crazy. So like I said, I quit my job in COVID, like 2020, to figure out how to start a business. So it was a crazy time, but that was kind of like my perspective. Like, I know that I won't give up. So I know something's got to give, and I can always get a job if I had to. And so like started getting clients, leaned into it more and got myself out of the way, which I think is a big thing starting out. And then it just kind of started evolving. And then it was like the beginning of 2023, into 2023, it seemed like people were with like the, politics and everything going on in the world, like people started getting fearful. And so we lost some clients as well, but we also gained some and, increased that lifetime value of our clients and starting to doing these productions. And so same in ours, like even being young, like you have those mindsets that people who just want to hold on to it and just kind of, skid by while they can, or those who want to invest, like you said, and continue to grow those times. And I think it's always something to think about. And don't get discouraged. Like have the thick skin, like your salesperson did. Like if someone gets mad or says no, it's like they're not for you. They're not
right.
the one for you, or they're not ready for you.
Yeah.
And just keep moving forward. And, I've heard you guys mention a couple times the webinars you guys have done and brought it in. Is that kind of your main marketing strategy to get new leads or connect with new people or help people to get them kind of into your quote unquote funnel, or, to continue to add value to them until they're ready to work with you?
I mean, it's definitely one of our key plays when it comes to marketing. For our agency coach, it's been an awesome way for us to connect with a large group of people and provide value. I think, when you asked the question earlier about AJ coming on, and what he was doing and how I talked about how I failed with sales before. Yeah. Well, the shift and the difference was that he was coming and providing value, calling people up and saying, hey, here's what I'm seeing as an expert. Right. And that was what's drawing people in. Yeah. I think webinars is another vehicle that we can use to provide value in advance in order to demonstrate our expertise and then get people to say, hey, I want to work with you. So whether, using webinars from an agency standpoint, right, and working with businesses that need digital marketing, webinars can be an awesome way to get a bunch of folks into a room, demonstrate that expertise, make them an offer to then take that next step with you. Yeah. But also inside of Agency Coach, as we work to attract agencies, the same idea. We put on webinars to provide value, to give insights, and then make an offer for them to take the next step with us. And so it has been a key part of our arsenal in the last 10 years of just like, here's what you can do. And I think the pandemic became just a blessing for us in a lot of ways. We've already talked about some of those. Right. Another one is the world runs on Zoom today. Yeah. The world runs on Teams and Google Meets. Like, that is not an obstacle for the average business owner today. Whereas, even as recently as before the pandemic, like that was an obstacle that people put in their way. Yeah. And so we've just been able to tap into a much broader audience. And, if you would have told me back in 2003 that we could have a room full of, 50, 100, 500, however many people virtually, so I could share this message, like, that would have blown my mind. Yeah. And I think that we have these opportunities for us, and that's just webinars. Right. Like, we're not even talking about other channels and social media and YouTube and all these ways in which we can kind of get known for what it is we do.
Yeah. And so like how important it is to kind of narrow it in to like what you're known for. People hear like find your niche or narrow your marketing, have a narrow vision. How important is that? Do you guys still believe that's important as you're growing, especially if you're starting out?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we all are these like walking personal brands, right? Yeah. And I think, I forget who said this, but you point out, it's not that Tesla is the brand, it's Elon Musk.
Yeah. Right.
It's not that Apple's the brand, it's still Steve Jobs, and he's been not with us for some time.
Right. Right.
And so I think that each of us has the ability to connect with people, through social media and how we're showing up online, especially, that gets them to know what we're all about. And whether you like niche down into a particular industry, I think that's a choice that somebody could choose to make. In our agency, we haven't done that. We haven't needed to do that. Okay. Simply because the thing that we've been known for is helping businesses to generate more customer activity. Right. So there's lots of different ways to narrow down, but I do think that being known as something for something is a really key way for people to quickly file you into a category, into a folder. Yep. So that way when opportunities come up, they either think, oh, I'll talk to this person, or they see, oh, I can refer this person. Right. I think the mistake is trying to be everything to everyone. Yep. And that is recipe for, you're just diluting your message, folks.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's a great point for sure. Even with us, like we started when we really, really were like, all right, video production, it was taking off, things like that. I was like, I got excited. I was like, well, we can do, we have, because our team has the skills and the history of weddings, of real estate. I was like, oh, we could do not only the brand stories for businesses and promos and trainings and stuff, but we can do real estate and weddings. Mm-hmm. So I tried to build all of it at once. And then quickly I was like, no. I was like, it's taking, like, this is where we're really, really good at. And if those come, because people know we do video, that's great. But as far as our marketing, like staying in this lane has been good for us and is going to continue to, I think, benefit us until we can have, the people kind of running those branches eventually where we can market it and things like that. But yeah, I think, being known, like you said, people will know who to call. Mm-hmm. once they get to that point of knowing you and what you do, for sure. So, and you guys have mentioned a lot is providing value, right? And I think that's key. And like sales, like doing it the right way, I think is adding value to those people. So how do you guys guide your, you know, your coaching students, your agency students to actually add value? Because people say, we want to add value, we like to add value, but are they actually adding value, or are they just kind of asking for the sell kind of thing?
Yeah. I think a lot of agency owners fall in the trap of being what we call order takers, right? Like they're waiting there for somebody to ask them for help.
Yep.
And then when they do, they're waiting for them to ask them what to do, right? Like, oh, they want a website, so I'm going to do a website. When, you know, really, like, we're the expert, right?
Yep.
Like, imagine you went into a doctor and you said, hey, doc, you know, I've had this pain back here in like my kidney area, and I was on WebMD last night, and, you know, I think I have this disease. I need to take it out, right?
Right.
You know, go at it. You know, what do you think the doctor's going to say? They're going to be like,
Sit down.
yeah,
Take a second. Let's ask you some questions. Yep.
Right? Let me ask you some questions. Let me examine you. Let me take a look, and then I'll provide you with some recommendation and prescription of what I think needs to happen, right?
Yep.
And so that's what we teach, and that's what we do, right? Is that I don't care why somebody comes to us, you know, understanding why they want to do what they're doing. So like, you know, a lot of times we'll get somebody that went, you know, I went to my veterinary conference and they said I need to do social media, so I want social media. And it's like, cool, well, why do you want that?
Yeah.
You know? And well, I want more customers. Cool. Well, let me take you through a process where I can determine whether that's the best way to get that right now, right? Because there's some other basic things that you're just not doing, you know, or may not be doing. And so once we can educate them on, you know, what's important in getting more customer activity, and then assessing them in the different areas, it's clear where our recommendations need to be, right? Sure. And so I don't care why somebody comes to us, they're going to go through the same process, and I'm going to tell them what I suggest that they should do, versus, you know, again, just taking their order. So that's proven to be like a really different approach. You know, a lot of times when we present our proposals to people, they're like, wow, this is wild. Like, you know, I asked 2 other people and they just asked, I told them I needed SEO and they said, $70 a month. That's it. They didn't ask me any questions. You know, whereas like we had a thoughtful approach to it and suggested, maybe that is what we suggested, but they still know that we did our due diligence to say, yes, that is the right thing that you need, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of like we have that kind of process of when we talk to people about video, like not everyone needs a brand story video. Some people just need like smaller promo videos. Some people just need, you know, the clips based on their, you know, their plan and where they're at. And same with the podcast. Like when we walk through people and start their podcast, like they're like, oh yeah, we're doing this, this, and this. And I'm like, you got a lot of irons in the fire. Maybe a podcast is not for you. Because I'm like, are you going to outsource? No, we're just going to get it set up. And I was like, it's a lot of work. Like, so, and going through that, and then like, you know, probably podcasts, unless like it's like your main thing, it's probably not going to be the best thing with everything else you have.
Right.
Or, you know, you don't have anything, like that's a great next step. And it's like, you know, almost again, like it's all about closing the sale. It's doing what's right for that individual or that business to get to that next level.
Right.
And if it's not the right time, that's okay. And hopefully most of the time, I think people see that and they respect that, and they'll either come back or at least they'll refer you or something. And I think doing it right is always better than just pushing for a paycheck.
Right.
So, and so with that, like if people are trying, so they've got that down, they, you know, they're adding value through these calls. They're trying to, you know, really niche into the driving force behind their clientele, but they're trying to now reach more people to do that. You know, you guys we talked about webinars. What are good ways that people can draw the attention positively to themselves to start those conversations?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when we look at webinar, that's just a vehicle of converting attention into action.
Right.
Right. And email, same thing. It's attention into action. So really it's about how do you get somebody out of where they're at currently and paying attention to you. Right. And so we kind of refer to it as a lake. Right?
Okay.
That one of the most valuable assets a business is going to have is their lake of opportunity. It's all the people that, you know, are on their email list, the people who are following them on social, people who are subscribed on YouTube, right? Those are the people that have attention. And so it's really 2 parts: is how do you get folks out of somebody else's lake and into yours? And then what do you do to nurture and get those people to raise their hand and ask you for help? And so I think what most people fail to understand is the difference between like a lead and a prospect.
Yeah.
Like a lead is the top of the funnel, unqualified person that's coming in.
Yep.
And prospect is someone who was a lead that then expressed interest in your stuff.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people go out there to do, quote unquote lead generation, and, they invest money in ads, and then they're like, well, the leads suck. or maybe even agency does this for their clients, and their clients ends up firing them because they're like, the leads suck.
Yep.
Well, newsflash, all leads suck.
Yep.
That's the definition of a lead. Is a sucky person who's not interested in your stuff.
Right.
Right. The trick is that you've got to take those leads and then nurture those folks and build a relationship with them.
Yeah.
So
warm them up.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you're running ads, if you're running a Facebook ad, right, or you're even attending an in-person networking event, there's going to be people handing you business cards.
Yep.
There'll be people opting in for your stuff through your ads, right? The mistake is assuming that just because they gave you a business card or opted in, that they're actually interested in your stuff at all. All we've identified is that they're in the market. They're in your market.
Yep.
And maybe not even a great fit, but they're there. Now what needs to happen is that we need to nurture and warm them up to get them interested in your stuff. Now, it does happen. Somebody who opts in is like suddenly ready right away for your stuff. I mean, you can do a scratcher on the lottery and you can win money.
Right.
But you don't always do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. There you can go to a networking event, a chamber of commerce, and you can meet someone who's like, I need your thing right now.
Right.
You can have like we told the story about our sales guy calling a random company, and they're like, we're talking about you. It can't happen.
Absolutely.
It's the exception, not the rule.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is like, how can we fish in other people's lake, right? Mm-hmm. Because Mark Zuckerberg lets us fish in Lake Zuckerberg. You go run ads on his platforms, and we can get them out of his lake and put them into ours, right? Yeah. And that's important because at some point, there's going to be this change, a snap of like things just stop working, right? Yep. Like there could be regulations that prevent us from running ads, right? Or there could be a pandemic which prevented us from going out there and talking to people face to face, which was a big part of our strategy back then.
Sure.
But then what do you actually own to actually go back in front of people? If you have the lake, you control that attention. You can get back in front of people, and then you can use things like webinars or emails or whatever else to convert that attention into some sort of action. So like I see people kind of confusing the fact that they just think they're going to run a campaign or show up to something and close a deal. So,
right.
Purpose of a campaign, the purpose of showing up in person, the purpose of any of those things is to get those folks into a place
closer,
where you can actually continue the conversation with them and warm them up.
Yeah. Like if you went to a nightclub and you're like asking every girl to marry you, and then you're like, how the girls in here suck. None of them want to marry. Right. I didn't want to do. Get to know them a little bit. And start to form that relationship over time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I love that analogy using that because you don't just. I mean, you get lucky every now and then, right?
Yeah.
Some people, find it. Yeah, exactly. So what is your lake? Is it an email list? Is it a Facebook group? Kind of what do you guys utilize? Obviously, it's different for everybody, but what kind of lake do you guys draw people into?
At its core, it is an email list, right? I feel like email is one of the often overlooked channels because it's not that sexy.
Right.
It's like, it's email. Right? It's been around forever. It's not TikTok. It's not YouTube channel. But it's the place it's one of the last things you can truly still own and control.
Yeah.
Right? We're always at the at the whim of the algorithm and everything else. The email and text message to a certain extent too is the ability for us to get in front of people. So ultimately that's where I want to have people. But, when people are focused on like getting big, say on Instagram, it's like, that's a tall order, right? To stand out in this ocean of people. But when you have and control an email list or a text message list, you're like the biggest fish in that small pond,
right?
And you can stand out. Like you don't need a huge email list to affect the opinions and understanding with that group of people in a way that's going to financially mean a lot of money to you. Like what's surprising to me, not anymore, but it used to be into new people coming into our world is you don't need a big email list to turn those folks into a career, into like, substantial revenue in your pocket every month.
Right.
And I think a lot of people will spend too much time inside of social media. I'm not saying not to do that, but I'm saying like, don't stack all your chips on the fact of whether or not your social, profile is going to blow up and you're going to go viral.
Right.
But if you can get the right people into your lake, into your email list, and then build a relationship with them on an ongoing basis, like that's going to turn into real dollars in your pocket a lot sooner
Yeah.
At least been our experience.
No, I agree. And I think, because we've seen like people like, oh, I got a huge TikTok, and then they freak out because TikTok could get banned. And it's like, they would lose all that and they would have nothing, so having that, and even then, at least you can export your list maybe on that email server and still have it if they were to take it down. But yeah, I think that's such a crucial piece is that people forget about, is creating that lake of their own, so they can have a little bit more eyes and attention of everyone. And people focus too much on going viral. When they go viral, most of the time, it's not the people they want to be seen anyways, most of the time, which can hurt them. So,
and so to kind of finish the story, what happened during the pandemic for us was when everything shut down, and once we realized that there was a certain number of abundance-minded people that needed our help, well, we sent out an email to the list, several emails. And said, listen, if you believe that there's more opportunity for you out there, if you could just attract the right people and activate them into your services, well, then come to this webinar and we're going to tell you all about it. And like, we were able to fill a room full of people. And at the end of that, we had people booking appointments like crazy. And we turned that into hundreds of thousands of dollars of recurring revenue for the agency, because we simply said the right thing to the people who were in our lake already. Right? And, we were freaked out that everything got canceled at first, but then we're like, we can create our own events. And we have the lake to tap into. We don't have to spend any more money on ads. And so like, that was a huge eye opener for us. We had all the pieces. We just never had the excuse where we're like, you guys better use this thing we've been building all these years. We emailed it from time to time, but we didn't leverage it like the true powerhouse that it could have been. And then we got to witness it firsthand, how awesome it was.
That's awesome. And, again, just continue to grow and pivot through all that, and, having the openness and the abundant mindset of like, there are people out there who are wanting to grow still. I think it's a big one, because there's always going to be uncertainties. There's always going to be, if you do watch the news, there's always going to be something to fear, or quote unquote fear, and things. And so having that mindset of, growth and I always say, I probably overuse it. I say it all works out. Like, it is what it is. It all work out. We're going to learn from it. Or it's going to be positive. Like, so, and just keep moving forward. So for those listening, again, they're early on in their entrepreneurial journeys. To kind of wrap this episode up, what would be, some words of wisdom or advice that you would give them? Maybe you wish you heard early on that could have, maybe given you a little boost.
Yeah. Probably the biggest thing, like, for a long time, we didn't realize the importance of having recurring revenue in our business. We were out there chasing large one-time projects, right? And for us, those were websites. Like, there was a time where we sold websites for $5,000, then we jumped to $10,000, then we jumped to $20,000. At one point, I sold a $100,000 website, and I'm like, cool, this is amazing. Like, all our problems are solved. But guess what? Like, a couple months later, like, there's no money in the bank again. And then you're like, and the more that we sold, right, the bigger our team got, the more liability we had, the bigger the payroll. We needed more space. We needed more equipment. And I almost needed to go out there every month and go get that money, right? And at the end of every month, I had to start at zero again, right? Or pretty darn close to it. And I remember it was after selling that $100,000 website to a local casino here in town, just feeling like kind of helpless, because I'm like, where the heck am I going to get another one of those next month, right? Like, I always want to like best my best. It's not like I had a few more of those sitting in the pipeline. That took me like 6-7 months to close, and there's just not a lot of those size business here in town. And still, Mike and I thought when we sold that, like, oh gosh, there's a nice cushion in our bank account now, and we're not going to have to worry about payroll or any expenses. And it wasn't but a few months later, that we felt like we were almost in the same position.
Right. Yeah.
We're like, that money just kind of vanished. And I went to our bookkeeper, and I said, Nancy, like, what happened? Like, we just had the most cash flow run through our business than we've ever had. And now we're back to square one again. And she ran a report that really changed our lives. It was a report of like our top 20 customers after a 5-year span, right? Yeah. And I was wholeheartedly expecting the casino Del Sol to be number one on that list, right?
Yeah.
And the reality was they were like number 19.
Wow.
And guess who was number one? It was a orthodontist who was paying us $2,000 a month for the past 5 years, right? Yep. And an HVAC company that's paying us $1,800 a month for the past 5 years.
Yep.
And what was cool about that is I'm like, crap, I've been chasing the wrong ones, right? I've been trying to go get these ones, and these are the ones, like, there's a bunch of orthodontists in town. Yeah. There's a bunch of HVs, there's a bunch of plumbers in town, right? All these people. And so it was like, man, we shouldn't have been high-fiving the $100,000 sale. I should have been high-fiving the $2,000 a month contract that we had, right? And so we shifted our focus 100% to be on the recurring revenue stuff and digital marketing. And we still do websites. Sure. We still have those big projects. Those are kind of the icing on the cake. But it didn't take long, maybe a year or less, for us to basically build our recurring revenue to where day one, first day of the month, all of our payroll and expenses are paid, right? And now I don't have to really sell anything that month. And so what that did for us is, we could take time off, extended periods of time, or we could work on the projects that we knew we needed to work on to make our business better or more scalable, rather than the Hail Marys we kept having to throw just to make ends meet. Right? And it took a lot of pressure off of us, and we're able to make investments decisions a lot easier, right? Because we knew that money was there.
You could start saying no to snowflake projects, or like projects that were just like not a good fit. We're kind of one of a kind, and like we said yes to it because the client was like, "Hey, I've got
money, right?
You can take this money and take the project, or I can walk away."
Yep.
Right? We're like, I take it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so I want to hear your stuff, Mike, too. But this is like, again, guys, I don't believe in coincidences. We are down here in production for another client who, was one of those. Like, we just dangled the thing and said, yes, we needed that. We were having a meeting about it, so let's do it. Got connected with these two. They're in Tucson. It just worked. Like, we're in the exact place that you're talking about, which is crazy. Like, we have reoccurring stuff monthly, and then we start getting these bigger, big one deals this year that we've never had prior.
Yeah,
and it's like, man, these are awesome. But then after each one, I'm like, where'd it go? What just happened? Like, that was great. And we kind of stopped focusing on the retainer stuff. And so now it's like we're in a position where I'm like, okay, these are great. I love doing these big productions. Like, I really do enjoy them and do all this. But like, profitability wise, I was like, we need more retainer clients so we can continue to scale and grow, just like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm like, okay, so we are at a point where like we have these clients, we do these productions, then what's the next step? How can we help them after that and build out the retainer stuff? And it's the social media content where we can shoot for them for, like a one-time fee. And then we have a smaller retainer per month that we edit those and send it to them.
Right.
And I'm like, and so we're starting to focus on that to get that up again. It's crazy that, that was what you mentioned and shared there. So that's awesome. So it makes me feel good. We're on the right page. Yeah. So we're getting the right traction there. So how about you, Mike? What's your kind of advice or guidance?
Yeah. I mean, I think AJ really nailed it on that at like a tactical level. I think on at a higher level, I think that, our businesses that we create, like, we get to make them however we want to, right? Like, so your choice to, sell ongoing packages of social media or retainers, or if you love doing like these big productions and that's where your card is, like, you get to choose what that's about. And, business is a game that we get to play. But more importantly, it's one as entrepreneurs we get to design. Yeah. And so I think it's like choosing on purpose the way you want your business to work. Like, I used to think that there were all these like rules that I had to abide by. Like, this is the way business works. And like, people will line up at your door telling you, you need to do it like this, you need to do it like that, or you can't do this. That's not acceptable. Or this is the market rate for this. You can only charge this much. Or like, there's so many like, rules that people want you to believe are true. But in my experience, that as soon as you like shine the light on them and challenge them, like, you can really design it however you want. And so as entrepreneurs, we get to build the business the way that we want. So originally we were just building the business that was a really hard game to play. Super hard game where you have a big team and you're getting these big projects that are few and far between. And you're like, constantly in this feast or famine business cycle where you have cash and projects followed by periods of time where you don't. Right. But you still have the team. Right. And so like, that was, the truth was that we set up the game to work that way because of, I didn't know. I didn't really have any business experience at all coming into this. I just kind of looked and just figured it out. But once we realized that, well, we could just change that. We should charge, monthly for that. And these big productions we're doing, like, we don't do a big, we're going to cover our flights to get out there, but it's going to be a monthly recurring, we're gonna translate that into something else. That's what we did for websites for a long time.
Nice.
Instead of doing upfront fixed bid website projects, what we thought we had to do, well, it's like, well, do you think that clients would pay monthly for that instead? Turns out they do. And so we could stack it that way. And so, so business is a game we get to play, but more importantly, it's a game we each get to design. And I think it's the days that I remember that is the days that I'm like most excited about business. The days that I forget that I'm actually in control of how the game is designed are the ones where I like, get in a deep dark hole of stress and not loving life. So, so it's like, if you don't love your business right now, right, I think the alternative is like go off and get a job. Right. Or I would say, I'm going to go start a hot dog cart. Because at least it's like cash for hot dogs. And worst case scenario, I just got to refund a hot dog. And like, how mad can somebody be at that? It's like, but the other alternative that isn't as apparent is, well, just change the way your business works. Put yourselves in the rooms of people who know and have already done it. Copy other people's stuff. Do it their way, right? Like find the people who've had the same struggle and ask them what they did to change and fix it, right? Like, life's an open book test. If you ever, back in the day in high school, the teacher walks in and she's like, pop quiz, and everybody groans, right? And then she's like, but it's an open book test. And everyone's like, yay, right? Like, why is it that we're excited in that scenario, right? It's because life is an open book test. It's actually not common for us to go, to have situations where we don't get to look up the answer or figure it out. But like the proud person in me and the lone wolf kind of attitude was like, I have to do it all myself. Right. Like, that's not true. No, it's not true at all. We have a world full of people. We're more connected than ever. And, think of in 2003, like my physical reach here in Tucson was like the furthest I could really get to learn from other business owners. But here today now, like we have the ability to get into the inbox of just about anybody you want. Right? It really is out there. And the thing that's probably stopping you from doing that is your own mind of like, oh, I don't think I should, or would they even respond to me? Like you'd be surprised. People want to help people. Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah. And guys, this has been a great conversation. We could probably talk for hours, but no, I appreciate it. Appreciate everything you shared, letting people in on your journey and how you've overcame some stuff and added value and all the nuggets you gave today. So again, I appreciate you both being on the Elevate Media Podcast today. Where can people connect with you so they can find out more and get your help if they need it?
Awesome. So we'll put some stuff over at agencycoach.com/elevate your brand. Cool. So there'll be some links for some agency trainings if that's you. And my Instagram is Mr. Mike Schmidt. So, test me. Go ahead and DM me, say, hey, what's up? Just threw it out there. So awesome. Love to chat with those who want to continue the conversation.
Cool. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much. Everyone listening. Make sure you get tuned in to them, check out what they're doing, and reach out if you need help. So again, until next time, go out there, continue to elevate your life, elevate your brand, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you in the next episode.